Okay, today we are diving back into the absolute universe and we are going to be looking at something a little different. We're looking at one of my making of my last pieces, a new hypothetical absolute version of one of Spider-Man's most iconic villains. When I started sketching this, my goal wasn't just to make him bigger or meaner, it was to fundamentally question what makes him a threat. Traditional Rhino is a joke, a guy in a rubber rhino suit, a mercenary with armor that doesn't fit the gritty blue collar absolute universe ethos I want to explore for Spider-Man. For this version to work as Peter's first big bad, he needed to be a product of New York itself, its industry, its corruption, and its failure. So, as I lay down these final lines and textures, let's talk about how this beast was made, why Alchemax is to blame, and how this one drawing is the anchor for a massive event tearing New York City apart. Let's get it. The design homegrown industrial nightmare. The key word here is homegrown. As I'm layering these colors and textures, I want you to feel the weight of the metal. Looking at the plate, it's not some sci-fi alloy that's coming up. It's scrap metal from New York. We're talking about welding holes of derelict bulldozers, salvage excavator parts, and old industrial boilers. I'm adding specific imperfections, heavy welded lines, and a ton of rust. It should look like he's built this, or he had it made in an underground chop shop, using whatever he could withstand a head on collision with a subway train. This asymmetry is vital to the monster concept. If the suit was perfect, he'd be just another armored guy. But this armor is crude, bolted odd, and uneven. This asymmetry makes his posture, which I keep leaning heavily forward, feel unstable. He's not a wrestler, he's a walking demolition site, always on the verge of collapsing under his own weight. He doesn't just run, he crashes through and destroys things. Next, we go to the drill, the reimagining of the horn. And now we arrive to the most crucial change from Spider Man and Absolute Spider Man Rhino. While the concept of the drill was always there, getting rid of the traditional Rhino horn on the helmet completely was essential to making this feel absolute. I want to shift that piercing force somewhere far more visceral and unsettling. He kind of mimics the Big Daddy from Bioshock and how they have that drill on their arm. I wanted to mimic that and that like unsettling feeling there. One of his arms is completely gone, replaced by this massive pneumonic tunneling boring monster. As I draw this, I'm making sure it feels too large for the frame. This drill doesn't look like an elegant weapon. It's a heavy duty industrial tool that has been cruelly grafted directly onto his bone. Look at the complexity of the pneumonic lines I'm adding. They have to power that unstable mass. Once this drill is active, the entire armor just vibrates violently. When he charges, that drill spins with a deafening mechanical shriek that echoes through the streets. Next, the Alchemex connection, the stabilizer. But how does a human being end up in this metal tomb? This is where the story of this absolute New York really hits, and it all leads back to Alchemex. In this universe, Alchemex isn't just a future corporate logo, they're the current monolithic shadow looming over the city. They've been conducting illegal biomechanical testing on desperate working class citizens trying to engineer a new breed of heavy labor force. Our Rhino was one of those people, an ordinary construction worker injured on the job and offered a check by Alchemex to undergo a procedure. They tried to mesh thick hide mammalian DNA directly into his human biology. It was an unstable failure. His cellular structure began to collapse. His body is literally tearing itself apart from the inside. And that is where this suit comes in. This armor isn't a weapon system, it's a cage made by Alchemex. They didn't just give him the suit to make him a villain, they bolted him into it to keep him from exploding. As I'm adding these tubes pumping that glowing stabilizer fluid, the specific green hue I'm mixing here, I want you to think about what is happening on the inside. That suit is constantly pumping him full of adrenaline stabilizers and immunosuppressants just to keep him functional. He was trapped in his claustrophobic, boiling hot metal coffin, a true asymmetrical monster birthed from corporate negligence. Peter's first big bad, the test of survival. This tragedy and corporate origin makes him the perfect first big bad for a raw absolute Spider-Man. Peter Parker is used to dealing with street level crime, muggers and car thieves. He's the fastest, strongest guy on the block. And then this thing happens. When Spider-Man faces this Rhino, all his speed and agility are pushed to the absolute limit, just trying to not get into the dust by that massive drill. Peter realizes that immediately that the traditional rules don't apply. You can't outpunch an avalanche. Looking at the debris I'm drawing around them, that isn't that is the collapse of an Alchemax project. Rhino's on a rampage. He's tearing New York apart. Because of that Alchemax experiment going wrong, something massive is happening in the city. Alchemax is trying to cover its tracks, and Rhino is their loose, unstable, suffering monster. Peter's caught in the crossfire of symmetric monstrous corruption he cannot simply web up. The stakes are grounded and real. The ground shakes, hydraulics leak like blood, and New York is falling. Outro. The monster in a concrete jungle. When you look at this completed drawing, you catch the real weight of this design. Past the jagged metal wedged helmet, meant for shattering load-bearing walls, I've added narrow ventilation slots that hint at the suffering, exhausted human face inside. He is a victim of Alchemax as much as a threat to this city. This Rhino represents the ultimate blue-collar nightmare, a man completely consumed by the industrial machine, transformed into a literal monster just to survive. That is what I wanted this whole piece to capture: the grease, the rust, the overwhelming sense of homegrown monster tearing through the concrete jungle. I want to know what you guys think. How do you feel about the asymmetrical drill hand and the stabilizer concept for the suit? Let me know your thoughts on the design and the story in the comments below. And tell me which Spider-Man villain we should give the absolute treatment to next. Thanks for watching the making of Absolute Rhino, and I'll see you in the next breakdown.